Jennifer Hudson has never strayed far from her Chicago roots, despite a meteoric rise to fame and even Oscar gold.
The little boy was reported missing Friday afternoon when his mom, Julia Hudson, came home to find him gone and her mother, Darnell Donnerson, and brother, Jason Hudson, shot to death.
I feel like as though we have like a new beginning, and it's beautiful. You know, we're still blessed, and I mean, we've had our loss, but we're finding our way.
No, I didn't understand.
You didn't understand why you would have been considered a suspect?
No. For what? Everything that was said in trial about me making threats or anything like that, it was all new to me. All. Our whole team wasn't ready for trial. They basically said that they wasn't ready for trial, but we was forced to trial.
Hard to make comparisons. For years, you know, working with the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, I was always said, well, can Whitney compare with Aretha? They're all-timers, and Jennifer definitely has that potential to be an all-timer.
As a kid at 11, I would sit and create duets between Whitney and I with her. I Will Always Love You, and like,
did you
God,
really?
Yes, I did.
Katt Williams is back in the headlines, stirring the pot by potentially exposing big players in Hollywood once again. He's shining light on how these powerful figures allegedly sacrifice their loved ones to stay on top, and one name that's really catching heat right now, Jennifer Hudson.
It's beautiful. You know, we're still blessed, and I mean, we've had our loss, but we're finding our way.
On October 24th, 2008, the quiet neighborhood of Englewood on Chicago's South Side was rocked by a horrifying discovery. Jennifer Hudson's mother, Darnell Donnerson, her brother Jason Hudson, and her nephew Julian King were the victims of a brutal crime. Darnell and Jason were found shot to death in their home, while 7-year-old Julian's body was discovered 3 days later on October 27th in an abandoned vehicle, also with gunshot wounds. The grim investigation was kicked off by Hudson's sister Julia, who made the heartbreaking discovery of their mother and brother's body.
What happened?
I don't know. She's on the floor. I see blood coming from her head.
Is she breathing?
I don't know. I didn't touch. I just went up the house.
Realizing that her son Julian was missing, an Amber Alert was issued, sparking a massive search effort. Sadly, the search ended in tragedy when Julian's body was found, deepening the heartbreak for the already shattered Hudson family. The investigation quickly honed in on William Balfour, the estranged husband of Julia. Hudson Balfour had a violent past and had previously made threats against the Hudson family. His relationship with Julia was rocky, filled with arguments, and eventually leading to separation.
That is the part that haunts you. Like, I remember one time when William and he had an argument with my sister, and he told her, I'm gonna take Julian.
Despite the warning signs, the full extent of Balor's violent tendencies became horrifyingly clear in the aftermath of these devastating events. Balfour was arrested on October 24th. The same day, Darnell Donnerson and then Jason Hudson's bodies were discovered initially. He was held on a parole violation while investigators worked to collect solid evidence. As the case progressed, key pieces began to surface. Balor's fingerprints were found on the vehicle where Julian King's body was discovered, and ballistic tests linked the gun used to a weapon associated with him.
We can confirm that the body located inside the vehicle was the body of 7-year-old Julian King.
In December 2008, Balfour was formally charged with 3 counts of first degree and 1 count of home invasion. The prosecution's case relied heavily on physical evidence and witness testimonies that placed him at the scene of the crime. Balor's trial began in April 2012, nearly 4 years after the horrific events. Prosecutors described him as a jealous and vengeful man who couldn't handle Julia Hudson's decision to leave him. They argued that his actions were driven by spite and possessiveness. Neighbors testified they heard gunshots and saw Balfour at the Hudson residence around the time of the further tightening the case against him.
Brother, even my brother, I kept saying to me, Jenny, knock it off. Like right now, my mama be fussing at me. Why you always crying? Stop crying.
Additional evidence against Balfour came from cell phone records and surveillance footage, further linking him to the crime. The defense, however, tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case, arguing that the evidence was purely circumstantial and suggesting there were other possible suspects. During the trial, Jennifer Hudson took the stand delivering a deeply emotional testimony. She recounted the last time she saw her family and reflected on her relationship with Balfour. Her heartfelt words emphasized the profound loss she endured and the devastating impact that had on her life.
I can't even say it. And I feel like when I say it, then that's when I find myself being the most emotional. That's when you know it's real.
Saying the word.
On May 11, 2012, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury found William Balfour guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life in prison. While the verdict provided some sense of justice, it could never fully heal the wounds left by the tragic loss at the time of the tragedy. Hudson was riding the peak of her career, having just won an Academy Award for Dreamgirls and receiving widespread acclaim for her singing, but the sudden and brutal loss of her loved ones shook her to the core, impacting both her personal and professional life. In the wake of the tragedy, Hudson took a step back from the public eye, canceling appearances, postponing projects, and immersing herself in grief. The intense media coverage only added to the emotional burden she carried.
As far as what?
As far as
No, I didn't understand.
you didn't understand why you would have been considered a suspect?
No.
However, Hudson's strength and resilience shone through as she gradually returned to her career, channeling her pain into her music and performances. In 2009, she made a powerful comeback at the Super Bowl, delivering an emotional rendition of the national anthem. This performance was seen as testament to her undeniable talent and ability to persevere despite unimaginable loss. Later that year, Hudson released her second studio album, I Remember Me, which featured songs reflecting her journey through grief and healing beyond her music. She sought to honor her nephew by founding the Julian Deakin Gift Foundation. In 2016, William Balfour broke his silence in a rare interview from the Pontiac Correctional Center in Illinois with ABC7's Chuck G.Y. Speaking from behind the prison walls, Balfour maintained his innocence, denying any involvement in the of Darnell Donnerson, Jason Hudson, and 7-year-old Julian King. He claimed he was the victim of a conspiracy, alleging that evidence had been planted and that witnesses had lied to secure his conviction.
The whole team wasn't ready for trial. They basically said that they wasn't ready for trial, but we was forced to trial. I mean, they done tested everything, and I was cleared of it.
Balor's words provided a chilling glimpse into his mindset as he portrayed himself as wrongfully imprisoned. Whether his claims were an attempt to cope with the enormous idiot of the crimes or a desperate effort to rewrite the narrative, his statements added another unsettling layer to a tragedy that continues to haunt Hudson and her family. I didn't have nothing to do with the case, and don't know who had anything to do with the case, he said. Balfour also claims that he was framed and that people lied on the stand, including his ex-wife and Julia, both women, said that he had threatened to them in the past. Not one time did I ever threaten her, period, said Balfour of Julia. He then spoke about Julian, saying this was a child that I used to see all the time, tried to get him to ride a bike all the time. I mean, I don't know. Do I miss him? Yeah. Do I love him? Yeah. Balfour was then asked about what he thought of the person who would Julian and replied, heartless, straight heartless. He hasn't got no family morals, nothing. And as to what he would say to Hudson, who he grew up with and went to school with, Balfour said, I didn't have nothing to do with her family being, period, despite facing life behind bars. Balfour remained unwavering in his denial of guilt. Throughout the interview, his demeanor was eerily calm, almost detached, as if he were describing an ordinary event rather than the horrific 3 innocent people. Everything that was said in TR about me making threats or anything like that, it was all new to me. What stood out most was the complete lack of emotion in his words. There was no trace of remorse, no sign of regret, just a cold matter. A recounting of his version of events. As ABC7's Chuck Goody pressed him with probing questions, Balfour stuck to his narrative, portraying himself as a victim of injustice. His refusal to accept responsibility was palpable, leaving a chilling impression on those who heard his story. The interview cast a dark shadow, raising unsettling questions about whether Balor's detachment was a coping mechanism or a glimpse into the mind of someone truly unrepentant.
Evidence, the keys, was processed a month later. What police department take evidence off somebody and process it a month later?
Given his strong feelings on the case and claims he had nothing to do with the Balfour was asked why. Then he decided not to testify during the trial. He said that decision was his lawyer's. And when pressed further by pointing out he could have overruled that decision, Balfour said, "I know that, but they was things that was discussed in private about taking the stand." Balfour was also asked why anyone should believe him, given the number of people who testified against him in the case, and the evidence presented, however circumstantial. I mean, it's up to them to make sense out of it, because if you make a statement and the statement don't add up to the way that happened, then it's a problem. That's reasonable doubt, said the career criminal who had previous arrests for attempted burglary, dealing, and car theft before his conviction. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented at trial, including cell phone records, gunshot residue, and witness testimonies, Balfour remained steadfast in proclaiming his innocence. He insisted that the evidence against him was fabricated, and witnesses were coerced, portraying himself as a scapegoat in a grand conspiracy designed to obscure the truth. One of the most unsettling moments of the interview came when Balfour discussed Julian King, the 7-year-old whose life was tragically cut short. Balfour coldly speculated that the child may have been to prevent him from identifying the assailant. His detached and callous remarks about Julian's death were deeply unsettling, exposing a disturbing absence of empathy or remorse. The little boy was reported missing Friday afternoon when his mom, Julia Hudson, came home to find him, and her mother, Darnell Donnerson, and brother Jason Hudson, shot to death. When pressed by Gowdy on his decision not to testify at his trial, Balfour attributed it to the advice of his lawyer. He implied that the decision was not his own, subtly shifting responsibility onto his legal representation. His comments reflected a pattern of deflecting blame and underscored his persistent refusal to accept accountability for the brutal Balor's refusal to provide further details on critical aspects of the case only deepened the surrounding the tragic events. Even as he faced life in prison without the possibility of parole, he remained defiant, clinging to his claims of innocence. Despite multiple appeals being denied evidence, the case was processed a month later, where police department take evidence off somebody and process it a month later. In 2019, Jennifer Hudson opened up in a candid interview with The Guardian, reflecting on the 2008 of her mother, brother, and 7-year-old nephew crimes committed by her sister Julia's estranged husband, William Balfour. During the interview, Hudson, now a mother to her 10-year-old son David, shared that although the loss still weighed heavily on her, she was determined not to let the tragedy define or derail her life. The star, known for her resilience, emphasized her commitment to finding strength in the face of grief. "I've learned to keep going," she explained, underscoring her resolve to focus on her future and family. She said, "Thank God. I think I attribute that first to God, next to the fact that when you experience trauma, it comes and goes. It's always there, but it's a matter of how you deal with it." The Oscar winner went on to note that she realized early on in the grieving process that she would need to honor her lost relatives by moving on with her life the way they would have wanted her to. "It would be worse to me not to press forward," she said. "I'm hearing my brother's voice say, 'Jenny, knock it off.' He would be angry at me for giving up, or all the things that my mother instilled in us. She prepared us. She would say, 'You know, I'm not always going to be here, and I want you all to be able to make it.' She used to say, 'Without family, you have nothing,' which is why it's so important to take care of family. So if I'm doing that, I know I'm pleasing my mother." She also noted that the establishment of the Julian D. King Gift Foundation, named in her nephew's honor, helped her move forward and cope with the unthinkable loss as well, because he was strong and very smart. "So to live in a way that honors them is what presses you forward, not to mention thank God that I have a child to live for one another occasion." She said, "It's frustrating as hell to me to have somebody who ain't lost nothing try to talk to me about it. I want to say, don't even bother, because you know nothing, but you never know how much you can get through until you're going through it. I went from being an aunt, having a mom, and being a child, to not having a mom, becoming a mom, and raising my own child," she explained. I tell David all the time you saved my life I've started by telling him some of the world's greatest people leaders and athletes are black people, she says. But I also tell him the reality of things. When a little black boy was playing in a playground with a toy gun and got shot by police, I told him you can't go outside and play with a gun. That's not safe or smart for you to do. I want to teach him to make him able to make smart decisions for himself. The former American Idol finalist shared that her late loved ones would have wanted her to keep going and continue doing what they love to see her do. This belief serves as a source of strength and motivation for Hudson as she honors their memory. Hudson also revealed that she remains close with her sister Julia, who lives nearby in a home Hudson purchased in their native Chicago. She described Julia, school bus driver, as someone with a big personality and sense of humor. The connection between the two sisters has only grown stronger over the years, offering a sense of stability and family in the wake of their shared loss. Hudson also spoke about her father, a Greyhound bus driver, who had 27 children in total. While she hasn't met all of her siblings, she cherishes the relationships she has with those she has connected with, underscoring the importance of family ties in her life. She said, "There's a lot of us apparently. My dad had 27 children. I'm the youngest of all of them. That's a lot of children. I've never met all of them. But that's the thing, I'm a family person. And so when I turned 16, I'm like, I want to go find Sam, is what we call him, and I want to meet all my siblings. It was my dream to have all of us at this grand Thanksgiving or Christmas table, and we all sit and eat together. That was my goal at 16." In 2020 episode of Oprah's Next Chapter, Jennifer Hudson revealed that she had found it within herself to forgive William Ballure, the man convicted of taking the lives of her mother, brother, and nephew. The Oscar and Grammy winner reflected on the emotionally grueling experience of seeing Balfour in the courtroom during the trial.